Absolute Trust Talk. I am Kirsten Howe. I'm here with Madison Gunn, and we are live streaming on various platforms right now. If you're here with us, if you're watching a recording, too bad, but you'll still get a lot out of it. When we're here doing the live stream, it's right after Thanksgiving. Madison, I hope you had a nice Thanksgiving.
I did. Thank
I
you.
sure did.
Yeah.
And so we have Christmas and New Year's and all those other end of year holidays coming up. And we thought this would be a really good time to talk about having a family conversation around estate planning. Estate planning sometimes involves making really hard decisions. And in some families, hard decisions can result in hurt feelings or anger or confusion, and that can lead to litigation. And we don't like that as planners. We're always trying to, first and foremost, implement our clients' wishes. And really, I think our second biggest goal is keep everybody out of court. So one of the things I firmly believe is helpful in every situation, but especially something like this, is good communication. And so today we're going to talk about some topics that we as planners would just really love it if all of our clients would discuss these things with their family ahead of time. It would make our jobs on the back end a little easier. Not that that matters. We're happy to do our jobs, but when we're having a hard time, it means the family's having a hard time, and we don't like that. So, Madison, let's start with something easy.
Yeah.
And then we'll move our way toward the really uncomfortable stuff. This one, I think, seems obvious. We say it all the time, but we're going to say it again here. And we are constantly seeing family members struggle with this, the surviving family members. You can make everything so much easier for your family if you just talk to them ahead of time about where and how to find everything. So let's kind of go through what are some things that we're referring to when we say that.
Yeah.
Make it easy to find stuff.
It's we try and make everything as easy as possible for our clients in organization, but we can't go to your home and organize all of that for you. So that's the hard part that would make things a lot easier for your family. And that's, where's your estate planning documents? Where's that binder? Or where are digital copies, or where can I get copies? That's a big one. We see a lot of clients who, they ask that question, but also they'll send digital copies off to their kids or their trustee or whomever is going to be helping them handle their estate. And then the bigger one is, where are all the assets? So,
Yeah, that is a challenge. That is always a challenge.
And how are they titled? That's always a big one too. Is it
but let's
either way, but the
focus
where
on
are they?
where are things, because there are, people more and more are moving away from having paper statements sent to their house. And that's helpful. That is helpful. If the paper statement is coming in the mail, at least you will find that evidence eventually. But a lot of people don't have that happening anymore. And so you've got to leave behind a list of your assets, or a copy of a statement from every account that you have. And then go ahead.
We have the forms in the back of our binder where you can list that out. But I always tell people too, like, if you just put the first page of your statements in there, that's helpful. Usually has the name of an advisor if you have somebody at the bank to help you. That's always a big one. And I know people are like, well, we give you our information when we do the estate plan, but once you've gone and retitled everything, that's not accurate information anymore.
That's right.
Or if you've consolidated or got a new bank account, or have a new investment, we don't know that information. So you don't want to rely on whatever information you've given us several years ago.
Yeah, our information might be 5 or 10 years old and not accurate anymore.
Yeah.
And then, there are there are assets that maybe don't really get statements very often anyway, like insurance policies. You're only
Re-
going to get, if you're still paying the premium, you'll get a notice to pay your premium, or, you might get an annual statement, but you're not getting a monthly statement. So you need to really let people know that you have these insurance policies or annuities, very similar kind of product.
Yeah. Or if your retirements are not in payment status yet, you might not be getting a statement either.
Right.
So an IRA or a 401k.
Right. You might just get some kind of annual thing. The other thing that's people don't often think about, we all have accounts and things that are not assets. So, like maybe you've subscribed to magazines or even electronic, digital, like I subscribe to the Chronicle, but it doesn't come to my house.
Right.
Nobody would know that. And if I didn't tell them, cancel this newspaper subscription if I'm dead, I don't need it anymore. So things like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Netflix,
yeah,
the
all
little
those
streaming services, if you're paying for Apple Music
you're going to
or
get, yeah,
Spotify, those are all things that are going to be recurring charges that,
you're going to get charged every month until somebody figures out how to get in there and cancel it.
yeah.
So, you know, which leads right into passwords.
Yeah.
You've got to, you're not going to share your passwords, but tell people how to find your passwords. I think that's a important piece of communication.
Yeah. And that can either just be written down and then you keep it up to date as you change your passwords, or if you use a password keeper, a manager, and then you have the password somewhere for that.
Yeah,
Whether that be Apple, most of our phones have that, or if you use some sort of outside password
yeah,
manager system.
yeah, yeah. It's so, as Madison said, what we have in the back of all of our estate planning binders, there's just like a section where it's a form you can fill out, and it's, who is your CPA, who is your financial advisor, who is this, where do you bank, where's all these things. So the people involved in your lives are important for people to know about, like that. Who's your CPA? Who's your financial advisor?
Your team.
Who's your team?
Who's your
Right.
team? Who's your village?
That's
You
right.
know.
And just think about what it would take to shut down everything you have going on and leave some kind of breadcrumb for people. It doesn't have to be a big conversation, but just let people know where to find all this information, and then gather that information and make sure you keep it up to date.
Yeah.
So, okay, what next, Madison?
Well, the big question, and I think we have this on the daily with our clients, is who will be your successor trustee? And
Yeah.
or who really the question might be who should be your successor trustee or who should not be your successor trustee.
Right.
And not through lack of ability, just it's it's not a glamorous job. And
It's
so
not a fun job.
no.
No. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And having this conversation with your children ahead of time, even before you do your planning or before you do an update to your planning,
Yeah.
a lot of parents, in my experience, will just go down the list. Okay, oldest child is going to be our
Yeah.
trustee. Second child will be the backup. Third child will be the backup to the backup, which is, it's something. It's a list. It's better than nothing, but is it always the right
Yeah.
list?
And I hear a lot about how they're worried that the middle child or the youngest child they're the ones that want to do it. And I always, chuckle inside a little bit because, little do they know what it actually entails. And so it might be good to have, if you're thinking about doing an update and naming your children, it might be good to have the meeting with your attorney to see what it actually entails and then go talk to your children and be like, look, you know, why do you want to do this? And do you really want to do it? And just be honest. And we're talking about the holidays, but by no means are we endorsing having this conversation at the Christmas dinner
No,
table.
not at
Please
Christmas
do not.
dinner. No. Yeah, it shouldn't be probably there shouldn't be any alcohol involved in this
Yeah.
conversation. But, you do it the way you do it. Um, so I think that, also, I'm just gonna say, some of these conversations we're talking about, yes, we wanna talk to the whole family, but sometimes you wanna have them also one-on-one.
Yeah.
So you're saying to, for example, your children, how do you feel about the fact that we're choosing your older brother to be the trustee? You want them to be honest with you and say, "Oh, I really don't think that's a good choice." They might not say that in front of their brother. So
Yeah.
just think about that.
It's all really dependent on your own family dynamic. And it's also important to kind of step back and really evaluate what that might be, not what you wish it to be. Because
Yeah.
it just might be that a couple of your kids don't get along, and that's okay. Everyone has different personalities. Not all personalities mesh,
Yeah.
but you have to just navigate it a little bit. And that might be, include not having that conversation altogether.
Yeah. Yeah. So thinking about sometimes parents really don't know what is happening in the background between some of their kids when they aren't present, and how would you know? And just be open to that possibility when you're having these conversations.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the healthcare directive.
Yeah.
Um, I
So,
this is a yeah, this is a
yeah.
really important conversation. So go
Yeah.
ahead.
I mean, a lot of times for us, our clients, they fill out their choices for healthcare and then they do the same thing. Either it's the children in order or they'll reverse that order for funsies so that they're not, making sure that that
Favoring
youngest
anybody.
child is
Yeah.
getting to make a decision. But, we don't know how much they're actually talking to their children. I mean, the document is supposed to be a guide as to what you want so that if you haven't spoken to your children can read the healthcare directive and say, okay, mom doesn't want to be on life support forever, or, whatever the case may be. And I don't know what the statistics are as to actually how many people have to make life support decisions across the country, but that's where everybody's mind goes when we're talking about a healthcare directive, right? So that's important because that is probably the most difficult decision that could be made from a healthcare directive point of view. But it's also good to
Right.
talk to them because it doesn't talk about everything. It doesn't say, I mean, unless you put it in there, it doesn't say, don't spend 10 grand on my funeral or I want a party or all of these things, these little things that you might want
Hmm.
may or may not be in the document,
Yeah, I
depending
think
on how out of date it is or if you
right.
haven't thought about it.
I think and I think that if you can think of this as really a kindness to your children to have these conversations, because it's very hard. um I think it can be very hard for a child to make a decision along the lines of we're not going to
Yeah.
treat, we're going to palliative care,
Hmm.
when you've never told them that's what you want. So, you're sitting there, the doctor's saying, well, we can do this surgery, we can treat this again for the fourth time with chemo, or we can move your mom to palliative care, and you've never had that conversation. How do you do that as a child? Say to the doctor, "Oh, yeah, let's give up. Let's
Yeah.
just give up."
And
So
and is everyone on the same page the
eh,
difference between palliative care and hospice care?
right.
Because there is a difference, and what does that look like to
Mhm.
everybody, you
Yeah.
know?
I think, and the other thing, I think, if you've named one child as your agent on the healthcare directive, and then, a really difficult decision like this has to be made, and you haven't talked to all the kids about, "Yeah, if I am in that situation, just let me go. It's okay." So the one kid has to that's a lot of pressure,
They
and
probably have to feel
and
like they have to justify their actions to their
yeah,
siblings.
yeah. But if the parents have talked to all the kids and everybody knows this is what mom wants, regardless of what you want, the child can make the decision, and it's just so much easier for them.
Yeah.
These are really hard decisions, and
And
it
the hard
happens.
thing is just having the conversation. I mean, don't don't assume and wait that someone's going to get a diagnosis, that you're going to have 6 months to a year to have this
Right.
conversation,
Right.
because if somebody has a stroke tomorrow and they survive but they're not going to recover, you got to make that decision tomorrow.
Right.
So I I feel like a lot of people wait to have that conversation to where, like, they know it's imminent now, and so
Yeah.
but you gotta have the conversation now when you don't have that threat looming over your
Mhm.
head. I mean, it's just and, like, a lot of times the people are like, "The kids don't my kids don't wanna hear it," and that's usually when I'm like, "Too bad." They're gonna wish they had
They're going
if
to,
they have to make
yeah,
the decision.
yeah, yeah. And related to that, and you kind of touched on it, is the disposition of remains. It's the same kind of thing. If you've never said, just stick me in a bag, cremate me, I don't want the $10,000 coffin. If you've never said that, it's very hard for a child to, you know, cheap out on mom's funeral. So, you know, tell them if it's important to you or if you don't care. If it's important to you, you want your wishes honored. If you don't care, maybe it's important to them.
Yeah.
And I think it's, because some people feel very strongly they want to have a place to go. They want to be able to go to the cemetery so they can spend time with their loved ones. And if you don't care, that's fine, but maybe your kids do care.
Yeah. Or the other way around. You
Right.
wanna have a final resting place, and they're like, "Why? We're not going."
We're not going.
Because
Yeah.
that's sometimes that's just hard for people, not in a disrespectful way, but they don't wanna relive that by
Right.
going, It's just and generationally, it's changed a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, I haven't been to a funeral in, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. I've been to celebration of life,
Yes. Yeah.
parties,
Yes.
but not like
Nothing with a dead
an
body in
open
the coffin.
casket with a viewing and all that.
Right.
Although we've certainly had our clients who are like, "No, I want them to mourn me for 3 days. I want to wake. I want," and that's just personal preference.
Mhm. Right. Right.
And of
Um,
course, and if you have religious preferences with that, you would want to put that. If you need to put in your healthcare directive that you want someone to sit Shiva with you for however many days that's supposed to, or well, till your burial, you should put that in there.
yeah. That should all be communicated.
Yeah.
Um, and ideally by conversation, but at the very least, write it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a few things about specific gifts I think we could talk about here. The bit, we always say it comes down to, you can say whatever you want, the teapot or whatever, whatever it is in your family. It comes down to some little tchotchke that everybody gets excited about. But really, the tangible stuff, it has the possibility for disharmony within the family if you don't sort this all out ahead of time.
Yeah, the sentimental value is
Mhm.
right up there with the dollars.
Yeah.
So when we've seen people initiate litigation and or have to pay extra legal fees to do things because they just can't communicate with each other about tangible property, the contents of the home, or you hear, "Oh, my sister went in when I wasn't there and took a bunch of stuff, and I don't know exactly what she took." That's a big one. Um, and how do you know? You don't know what the loss or damages or the value of their
Yeah.
share. Not only is it an issue as a trustee or an executor in determining whether or not everyone got their equal share or what they're supposed to get, but also, you know, you have to see what they actually want.
Right.
And we've heard about, what is it, the Post-it notes
Right.
or
Right.
the jar of Sharpies in the
Right.
house. Every time the kids come over, they put down what they want,
Mhm.
which, you know, depends on whether people think that's morbid or not.
Yeah, yeah, you could look at it that way, but it is helpful to get it sorted out. If there are things that specific people want, make a note of it and then make it happen. And because we see these cases where one child will say, "Well, mom always said that was going to be mine someday."
Mhm.
but it's not written down anywhere, and
Right.
nobody else heard that conversation. So that's going to be ugly. That's going to be,
Or mom said that was supposed to go to our neighbor, and they're
oh,
not anywhere named in the documents. They're not a child or a
right.
beneficiary, and it's something big, like a
Yeah.
car.
And the trustee can't do that.
Right.
That's in violation of their duty to give a car to somebody that's not specifically given the car.
That happens a
So,
lot with the grandkids. So if
oh,
it's I
yeah,
leave everything to my 3 kids equally, and then the trustee's like, "Oh, well, she really wanted
you
her
want it.
grandchild to have her wedding ring." And it's like, "Okay, well, you're gonna give a $15,000 wedding ring to a grandchild that's not named unless their parent predeceased her or something like that," And so that is the most common, I think. Or
You're right.
the car should go to my granddaughter or grandson.
You're right. You're right. Yeah. And
Yeah,
in the grand scheme of things, it might be relatively small. It's a $5,000 car and the estate is
right.
worth $800,000, but
Yeah,
legally the trustee can't do that.
yeah.
So, you've got to get these things nailed down.
And it's good to know if all of your kids want the same item, or two of them want that they all want the same thing, then it's better to come up with a plan for that now than worry about fighting later.
Later. Yeah, because the fighting can, arise or can be triggered by these little items of sentimental value and almost no monetary value, but that's just, masking what's the real underlying,
Right.
hassle between these 2 kids, but that little thing will trigger it. So, best to get everything off the table if you can.
Yeah, if you could cut out any decision making that they have to do in
Yeah,
terms of that, the
if
trustee, if you cut out their decision making, then one, they don't have the burden of making the decision, and two, no one can resent them for it because they didn't make the decision.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so all of that, by having the conversation, having a meeting ahead of time, you can
Documenting it.
eliminate as
Yeah.
much decision making as possible. That's a really good way of putting it, Madison. I really like that. Um, okay, so we were talking about tangible items, but we've talked about real estate, I feel like many times,
Probably still not enough though,
but it's
I'm
not
sure.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
If something is, I mean, just a few points, if you've got real estate and some family member is living in your home and there's not been a discussion about it and your estate plan doesn't cover it, there's gonna be I guarantee you there's gonna
Yeah.
be a problem.
Especially if it's the child that moved home to take care of you,
Mhm.
and maybe some promises were made, and the estate
Not
plan
written
doesn't
down.
reflect that,
Yeah.
there's gonna be, and they're already gonna be resentful that their siblings didn't help, or something of that nature. It's always lopsided thinking, always. Um, you know, his
Yeah.
side, her side, and then the truth. But it's just, you gotta have that, yeah, documented. If you want them to live
Mhm.
there for a certain period of time to get on their feet, if you want them to have the house, it's gotta all be in your estate plan. And it shouldn't be a surprise to the other kids,
Right.
preferably.
That's the main point. Don't let that come out after you're gone and everybody is surprised and maybe resentful and they're going to act out somehow. It's going to come out.
Yeah.
It always does. Okay, so that is leading kind of into the big the big daddy conversation you got to think about is any kind of asymmetrical um, inheritance arrangement among your children or a disinheritance, the same thing. If you're treating your children differently
Even
than
if that means one child's money is gonna be held in trust and the other 2 get theirs outright, even if it's the same exact dollar amount, though you're still treating them differently, and
yeah,
there will likely be resentment, especially if they're not like a special needs person, where it's not something that's to be expected.
yeah, yeah, where it's obvious and everybody understands why. So, don't asymmetrical inheritances aren't always the result of bad karma or disharmony within the family, there oftentimes are really good reasons to do that. We've got lots of clients who say, oh, my one son, he's so successful, he doesn't need our money, and the other two really kind of do. So everybody knows, everybody understands. No, they don't. They don't
Right.
know that until they hear it from you.
And that successful son might be like, I've worked so hard and all you've done is helped my siblings out their whole lives and they've never done anything. Why are they getting extra money?
Yeah, and it feels like a slap in the face
Yeah.
to the successful son, even though, yeah, he doesn't need your money. It's
But
not about the money.
it's basically your final word, your
Yeah,
final act that's how they're gonna remember this by.
right.
And that's what you probably don't want.
Yeah, so I just getting that out there in front of everybody, having that conversation, that it really does, it goes a long way to avoiding those kind of hot feelings that can result in bad behavior, or troublesome behavior, I should say.
Yeah, and it's not about asking them for permission
No,
so much as it is just, "Hey, this is my plan. This is" if you want their input, you can ask for it, but you, by all means, are not required to have input from your children on that portion of your estate plan. I mean, I suggest it for the other things, like what do they want out of the house, but when it comes to inequities or treating anybody slightly different, you know, just letting them know and
right,
would be
right.
helpful.
Yeah, no, we are not, we do not like the idea of asking your children for permission to
No.
create your estate plan the way you want to. You create your estate plan the way you want to. That's
Yeah.
our job. You get what you want. We're just saying, let them know.
Yeah.
Let them know.
And we're big fans of informed decision making over here, as I'm sure most people are. And so it might just be that having your children's input might inform your
Mhm.
own decision making, not so much in changing your mind, but maybe how to go about it,
Yeah,
because that is something that we do with our clients all the time. Like people come in with a rough idea of how they want what they want their children to get, but not necessarily the how. And that's something that the estate planning attorney can help work through all the, choose your own adventure of how distributions occur.
right.
So there's more than one way to get everything done. And so it the attorneys can help find the right fit as to what would work for that family usually.
Right. And everything that we're talking about here, we're encouraging conversation and communication. None of that is meant to take the place of the conversation with your attorney.
Right. Yes.
We're not suggesting that by having these conversations, you're solving the problem. You still have to then turn around and turn that into a legal document
Yeah,
with an attorney.
and while you could have a conversation with the attorney with all of the kids, you still need to have a conversation with your attorney without the
Out the
kids.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Um, okay. I think, is there anything else you want to add to that, or should we go to our audience questions?
I think we can go to audience questions. I mean, we don't necessarily have any good ideas for how to make this a less awkward conversation with your family, but sometimes you just have to rip the band-aid off and force the conversation, you know, at the very least, if it applies to your family in that way. And don't assume that, oh, all my kids get along, everything will be fine. I hear that the most.
Yeah. And I'm just going to throw in, I mean, if worse comes to worse, you just can't bring yourself to have these conversations. Um, my litigator colleagues will say, okay, then write a letter. Just write a letter explaining why, Johnny is only getting half as much as Susie and Mary. Write a letter. It will, take the place somewhat of that conversation. And it might make the hard feelings a little bit
And
more
don't
manageable.
assume that just because you told your attorney that we can relay that to
We
your
can't tell.
kids.
Yeah. There's the
Write
attorney
that letter
client.
to your kids, not to
Right.
us.
That's right. We are prevented by the attorney client privilege from sharing that with your kids. Okay, so is it, oh, I'm got another one. Okay. Is it okay to keep my estate planning binder in a safe deposit box? So we've been talking about tell people where things are located. Madison, I know this is one of your favorite topics.
I know. I was thinking about that. I was like, if you go back and listen to all of our podcasts that were together, I think it's mentioned in every single one as being the bane of our existence. So, yes, you can, if you have a box big enough for your estate plan, you
That's
can
yeah.
put that in there. There's nothing against it. The bigger question is really, is someone going to be able to access it? Because if you're not on the name on the box, or you don't have a key, or both, it's not going to be found without a probate, or it has to be drilled to get in contents, inventory contents, but you won't be able to take anything out of it. You just find out what's in there. You can get a copy of it, but you won't,
You can't
maybe
actually, yeah.
you can't actually get to it. And we've had to probate boxes that have nothing in it. And
Right.
it's, what, a
Yeah.
year or two of your time to get that out of
Waiting.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Waiting to open that box that and turns out has nothing in it. Yeah.
I know we're going away from that. A lot of those bank branches are closing and canceling people's safe deposit boxes, so maybe this won't be an issue in the future. But typically there's nothing in your estate plan that is going to allow someone to steal your identity
Yeah.
in that sense. I mean, so
Yeah.
it can be kept in
You
your
can
home.
keep it at home. You can keep it at
Yeah.
home. You could, put it someplace not obvious at home and then make sure your kids know that
Yeah.
where that place is or somebody knows.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be your new coffee table book. It just,
Probably not very good
right.
coffee table
Even though our
material.
binders look very nice,
They are
but
pretty.
yeah, they
Yeah.
don't that doesn't have to be on display.
Okay. Um, okay. So this question is I've heard about hiring a professional to be a trustee. How can I find one of those?
Yeah, so you can ask your estate planning attorney. Obviously, that will get you a personal recommendation. But all licensed professional fiduciaries in California are regulated by the state of California. So you can find a directory through PFAC, the Professional Fiduciary Association of California. You can get a list there. What I like to do, depending on the age of the person doing the estate plan, is that you can, you can involve your children by having your children be the ones who get to choose a fiduciary. So, like for me, most of the fiduciaries that we work with are older than me. So I might not want to choose one of them unless there's a succession plan in place and all of that. But I might say, I'm going to have my daughter choose I don't want her to be the trustee, but I want her to go choose a fiduciary. And then she can just go talk to an attorney
Right.
and, who's working right now. And plus, if you choose someone now, are they taking new clients? Are they,
Yeah.
all of that. Although in terms of, we didn't really touch on it, but there's a difference between who your trustee is after death and when you're incapacitated. And so sometimes people choose banks as their trustee, but that's not going to be helpful if you're incapacitated.
Incapacity
And
is not.
someone has to come in and do care management and bill pay and set you all up and do all of that. It's going to be somebody that you want to work with that's an individual. And so if that's the case, you might want to go interview
Some
fiduciaries and who you're
fiduciaries.
going to work with on a regular basis.
Yeah. Okay. So, but bottom line, to find a individual who is a professional, you go to the PFAC website,
Correct.
PFAC, and I think they have them sorted by county, so it's pretty easy to interview a few. Okay,
And
I
it's
think that's
pfac-pro.org.
oh, okay. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
All right, I think that's the end of our questions. That's the end of our discussion. We encourage you all in the next 3-4 weeks to think about having these family conversations. And it doesn't have to happen around Christmas or New Year's, but it is a good time to at least start that process. So thank you all for joining us. I hope you got something out of this. I I always do, but even when I'm just talking to Madison, because she sees things differently, and it's all good. All right. If you would like to see more of these episodes, they're all on YouTube. They're all on our website. Very easy to find, and we both look forward to connecting with you next time.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Absolute Trust Talk Live. If you enjoyed listening in, then don't forget to subscribe. You can find us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may listen by searching Absolute Trust Talk. While you're there, we would also love for you to leave us a review. And then why not share your favorite episodes with family, friends, or colleagues too? You can find all of our shows and corresponding show notes by visiting absolutetrustcounsel.com. You'll also find a variety of other free resources, including our ebooks, videos, blogs, presentations, and more. If you need help with your estate planning or administration, we also offer a free discovery call to help get the process started. You can find more information on booking your session by visiting absolutetrustcounsel.com/scheduling. Don't forget to keep an eye out for our next live episode in 2 weeks. If you join us for the broadcast, you can submit questions during the show. But if not, don't worry. You can always get in touch with us by sending a quick message to info@absolutetrustcounsel.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you soon.